Brandon, it's great to have you with me today. I first want to share with everybody that I met Brandon through a Facebook group. I reached out, for podcasts, connecting with each other and trying to work out things. And you responded, and we just started talking from there. And that's why I have you on. I don't know everything about your journey. I know you have a business and everything going on like that. So I'm just curious to know more about who Brandon is. And if you don't mind just sharing who you are today and, what you are doing. And then we just focus on how you got to where you are.
Yeah, let's be clear. I responded once on Facebook because I'm terrible at Facebook. We were just joking about that. If you want to reach out to me, Facebook is not the place, but more on that later. No, I'm excited to be here, John. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and having me here. Yeah, I'm a podcaster too. I have a couple of podcasts. I have a couple of businesses. I got a lot going on, but really what inspires me is I love talking to other people, specifically about business. That's my passion. It's my job. It's my hobby. It's just I'm all about business. I love helping people grow their businesses, find easier ways to do things. And actually, I was thinking about this recently. I had my first grade teacher called me a problem solver. Like, she was the first person in my life to ever call me a problem solver. And I was asked on another show, like, what inspired you to be this way? And I don't know that I was inspired. I think I was just like, I was born to help people solve problems. I've just focused on business issues. So I might be a little bit broken, and I'm cool with that, but this is what drives me, and that's why I do what I do. So I'm excited to be here and talk about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we could just start with that. I mean, your first grade teacher said that, you fix problems and stuff. You're a problem solver, right? So, I mean, I would imagine she was probably maybe the first, right? And somehow you remember that, and going way back to remember that's pretty damn good. That's awesome. But so along your journey, do you remember hearing anybody else say something like that to you, or you just kind of carried it out?
No, actually, to be real, I thought I was like broken, because I know I just joked about that, but honestly, that's what I thought in the beginning was, because she pointed that out, but everybody else in my life would just say kind of negative things, like, saying I have OCD, or I'm obsessive, which I know could be considered the same thing, or I'm like scatterbrain, like squirrel brain, the normal entrepreneur, like ADHD thing. And I was like, why does everybody tell me I'm like all of these negative things, but then this person over here says I'm a problem solver, which sounds like a good thing, right? So I kind of had these two narratives in my head, if you will. It was like, I'm broken because I obsess on things, but I also solve problems. And it wasn't until probably my mid-20s that I really found a way to weave those two things together and actually make them both very positive. And it took a long time, and it took a lot of, I guess, self-discovery work, you could say too, of just coming to the truth of like, okay, these are gifts first and foremost, and they're actually superpowers when you weave them together. So the journey from first grade, I don't know how old you are, like 6 or 7, to where I am now in my 30s, it was a long journey, but it was definitely worth going through to figure out what those gifts mean and how I can use them to serve others ultimately. I think for me, that's the most important part, is like, instead of just harping on the negative and the past and the childhood trauma and all that stuff, it's like, how do I use this to make the world a better place, to make business better, to just have better relationships with people all around? That's really the gift of the experience for me.
So you became the problem solver for businesses? Is that kind of where you're?
Yeah, we could, if you want to give me that title, I will take it.
That's perfect. Well, then you are the problem solver for businesses. How's that sound?
I love it.
So, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, where'd you start? Did you start a business? I don't know when, so when was that time? And then what was it? And what kind of like led you into starting a business?
Oh, well, my first one, you could definitely consider child labor. I think I was like 10 or 11. And it was just, this is where I'm saying, like, I really think I was just like born this way, because so in my neighborhood growing up, we had all these neighbors seemed like they were always going on vacation. And I think my parents sparked the idea of like, oh, Brandon could water your plants and walk your pets and bring in your mail while you're away. And they started to pay me. So I was like, all right, this is cool. So I had like business cards printed up and flyers, and I would go around and say, I'll watch your house while you're on vacation. And I did that for like a really long time, honestly. But I made good money, and I was like, okay, this is cool. Like you can help other people and make money. That's cool. I like that. And then I would always find a way to be entrepreneurial. And the next thing I remember doing was semi-illegal. It wasn't drugs or alcohol, but it was in college, and I would like sell these knockoff football jerseys to the people that lived in my dorm room. And I started making a lot more money. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I made money in there, and now I'm making even more money. And in college, like, I mean, come on, that's just awesome, right? I didn't have to work a job. I wasn't working for somebody else. And I kept finding ways to just create money from providing a service. And that's when I started to get into like real business, which was all legal 100% of the time, I promise. But that's when I kind of, I worked for my dad actually in his business right out of college. And then I started my own. And that was 6 or so years ago at this point. And I've just always had that bug to it came from finding a problem that existed and providing a solution, but being different than everybody else that did it. That I don't know why, but like, I'm just so convinced that things are broken the way they're done, which is also a problem I have, which I will admit, but I have to find like a different way to solve problems. It's not just like, no, you can't solve it the normal way. You have to be totally absurd and different. And that's how you'll solve the problem. And then it's okay for me to pursue that. But that's how I kind of got from baby businesses to real businesses, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So did you say your family was entrepreneurial as well, or?
Yeah. So my dad ended up, I think I was in high school when he started, he bought into a franchise. So I would kind of do that on the weekends and after school. And then after college, that became my first like full-time job, was helping him grow that company.
Okay. Yeah. And so my dad, my grandmother, they had a bar tavern, they call it, that I grew up around. So that was kind of the experience I got to see. I got to see the part where you go in, you clean up and stock everything in a way, right? And then you see some bad stuff happening too with people, but that's the experience I had. Anyways.
And then they convince you too, right? It's like, no, you're learning, so you're gonna clean and sweep the floors and everything.
That's yeah, and that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, you have to start somewhere, right? So you walking the dogs and all that stuff. You got experience from it, and you're like, oh, I can make 25 cents or whatever. They were paying. But that's where you start, and you're like, okay, I could provide a service, I could provide a product, and I can get money exchanged for it. And now it sounds like I don't know exactly yet what your business is about, but it sounds like you have a service and you are taking somebody from A to B, and you're bridging that gap for them, right? So, what is that real quick? And then we just keep going.
Yeah. So that business that I just mentioned that I started a few years ago, I sold that last year. So that was an exciting ride, definitely an interesting journey, start to finish. Now, what we do, I have a business partner, is we solve business problems. Shocking, right? I know. But really what we do is, if I were to give myself a title, which I like yours, I might steal it, but we have a fractional COO business. So I am the fractional COO that helps overwhelmed and overworked entrepreneurs get 50% of their time back in 90 days, because that's the one commodity that we just can never, ever replenish. So that's what we help people do.
All right. And so what made you start something like that? I mean, was it something that you experienced yourself that you're like, I'm losing all this time as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So that was my journey in the last company. It was, you start a business and a real business. So you start a real business and you start making money and you have clients and customers, and then you become a slave to that business. And that's the kind of the path that we're taught. It's like accepted in the world of entrepreneurship. It makes absolutely no sense. But it got to the point where I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I was chained to my business because if I didn't work, the work didn't get done. Who else was going to do it? So I had to find a way out of that path. I was missing out on my family life. I missed the first 6 months of my son when he was born. It was I mean, it was bad. And I know some other people listening to this are in the exact same boat, I'm sure, or have been. So I know my story's not unique. It's not boohoo me, but this was my path. I had to figure it out because I did not want that life for both for myself and also for my family. If we were going to have more kids, that's not sustainable. So when I kind of got out of that path, there was a few things that I did that really made a big difference. I was able to go from working 70, 80 hours a week down to about 5 hours a week in like 6 months. It was really, really quick, and it lasted, like it actually stuck, and the business grew. So I was able to not only grow the business, but also drastically reduce my time. And then, of course, I was able to set the business up to a point where it was sellable. I did sell it. It ran itself. And that's kind of the American dream, if you will, is to start something, make it self-sufficient, get out of it, get your time back, and then you could do whatever you want with your life. You can sell it, you can keep it, whatever you want. So I met my business partner, and at the time when I met him, this was about a year and a half, 2 years ago or so, I went to him and I was like, I have this idea. Small business owners are chained to their businesses in most cases, and they don't have the right resources to necessarily fix that problem affordably, or there's a lot of really bad messages in the marketplace that tell you they're like the silver bullet to grow your business, or they're the quick fixes, and none of them ever hold up because I've tried all of them. So just take my word for it. But I said, I want to build a company that's kind of like a fractional C-suite. Like I would love to just have the knowledge of a super experienced CFO that can help me make really good financial decisions for my business, a really, really experienced CMO that can help me take my marketing and take it to the next level. And what he said was, I kind of have that solution. Let's talk about it and let's see where this could go. So he came from, I wanted to kind of take what I had learned and the experience that I had in working with these really smart people and create a package where we could give it to other small business owners at an affordable price, but also that's really, really reliable. And we put those two things together, and that's really exactly what we built.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so when you were in that other business working 70, 80 hours a week, did you find yourself, obviously in the beginning, I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like, it's all me, right? Like you're doing everything probably from the beginning. But did you find yourself still kind of like holding to that? Like I still feel like I have to do everything, even though I might be at that point where I don't have to.
I think for me in the beginning, it was, well, I had a bad experience sort of delegating, if you will, because I fell into the trap of, well, no one's going to care about this the way that I do, and they're gonna ruin it, or they're gonna let the customer down. And my priority was always the customer experience. I think any business really should be, and most businesses are. But I held on too long because I thought I had to, I guess you could say micromanage. I thought I had to micromanage. I thought I had to be on top of everything. I thought I had to be involved in everything. And it wasn't until I kind of made that shift and really learned what leadership is and should be. It's totally different than what I thought it was. It wasn't being a boss and micromanaging. The essence of leadership is to inspire somebody. So to be a leader, you need to step completely out, and you need to use your voice to compel people to get things done the way that you set out as expected in the company. So when I learned that and I made that shift, then things started to fall into place. I was able to hire easier. There was a number of other things that went into it, but when you find the right people, you hire them, you train them, and then you inspire them, you're no longer pushing the boulder up a hill. You're kind of like pulling the cart down the hill, and it's a whole lot easier to move really, really fast.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up leadership, because it's exactly what I was thinking when you were starting to talk. Yeah, you have to kind of show them, tell them, how to do something, and then let them do it. Experience any pitfalls or whatever it might be, and you walk away, and you're there to support them. Like you said, you don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to be looking over their shoulder all the time. But yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm a supervisor right now, so I obviously I say my thing and I'll walk away. And I'm not there pointing fingers, but it's just sharing my experience and what I have to share, to them. So hopefully they can carry that out wherever they go, if they decide to move on for whatever reason. But so I mean, did you learn that along the way, or did you reach out to somebody else looking for build that skill up?
No, almost every single thing that I've learned along the way came from somebody else. There were things like no, I can't even say that. Even when people say like they're self-taught from who? From YouTube? That's fine. It's still from somebody else. So yeah, I give credit where credit is due. Nothing is my own doing. And it's just a combination of things that worked really, really well for me. Now that's where the uniqueness does come in. And that's where, for our current business model that we teach to our clients, we call it the harmonious business model in our company now. My business partner came up with all of it. It's a combination of well-respected business disciplines in a unique way that really has you working less and making more. He's the genius. I am just the guy that understands, okay, this really works, and this is what worked for me, and that's how they overlap. But yeah, I would say I always prioritize investing in myself, in my learning, in my deficiencies. I would always kind of try to learn it first and then bring on people to help me with it. Or if it was just something that was totally outside my pay grade, accounting is a fantastic example. I always brought in the best people I could possibly afford to just make sure I was doing it right, because I'd also had the flip side experience where I tried to cheap out on things and, hire VAs to do some task or whatever it was. And they would just like totally drop the ball. It's not their fault. They weren't trained right because I wasn't a good leader. So that's always where my priorities went.
So you said something about your partner was like, is the genius. Like, so what's he putting it all together? And then, I don't know, you're sharing to him your ideas and he's putting it as a package?
No, so he worked as a fractional COO and consultant to the Fortune 100 for 2.5 decades. He's worked with over a dozen of the biggest companies in the world: Nike, Uber, Johnson & Johnson, like the companies you've heard of them. And he has solved the biggest unsolvable problems for them, because what he realized was businesses are not, as they're projected to be, departments and silos. They're living, breathing organisms. And the way that these disciplines, if you will, or departments play together and integrate with each other, that's where all of the magic happens. That's also where all the problems come from. So Harmonious is an acronym for the 10 fundamental business disciplines that are present at all levels, Fortune 100 to solopreneur. And leveraging the links between them is how you can work less and make more and grow your company. It's how you can achieve freedom. The big companies, what they do is they compensate with money and people, which small businesses and solopreneurs, they just don't have. I mean, it's impossible to do what they do. So when we try to copy that model, it completely falls apart. And that's why small businesses fail at an astonishing rate. So he's identified this architecture. He's put it together. He put it into a format where we can install it in our clients' companies. We can help them run a harmonious business. He's the brains. I am really an executor, if you will. So I help our clients do this. He helps our clients do it too, but he's also growing another multi-million-dollar company of his own. So we talk about it all the time. We get online, we talk about it. We have podcasts. I mentioned that. He's the brains, I'm the pretty face. That's what I like to joke, but I'm not that pretty. So I don't know how good that analogy is.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy, but
that's why it's the podcast, right?
That's exactly right. No, so I just want to say a few things, and then you don't have to speak for him, but I think it's really cool that he came from all the, those companies, knowing what they dealt with, and then bring it down to a level for, it could be hundreds of thousands, maybe million people, that are entrepreneurs. I don't know the number, but and in
over 30 million in this country alone.
There you go. So I mean, and supply that to 30 million entrepreneurs, like that's amazing. Instead of those top companies, right? And it sounds like you brought it down to a level where people can understand it and implement it. you know, and you, like you said, make it affordable as well. So you brought it all the way down. And then you're the executor, which I like, you know, you use that word. I like that a lot.
That sounds terrible when you say it. I didn't hear it. No, the executor.
Yeah. I guess it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't sound. But you know, and here we are. You're showing up like in a sense, like when you said that. You said in the beginning, your story was like you sat down with him and you said, I have this idea. Like it's your baby in a way, right? So you want to present it, you want to get it out there, you want to share it with the world and see a change. So you know, that's what I'm feeling from you sharing that to me and to whoever is listening to this. But I think that's cool. So I just wanted to share those few words. But so I mean, like, where are you going from here? So you have just that one package or whatever. Is there something else you're offering? Like, is it coaching and stuff like that too?
Yeah, so that's kind of how we get people started with the model, because it's, if you look at the whole thing, it's a lot. If you think about like changing your entire business model, that doesn't happen overnight, and we wouldn't recommend it happen overnight. So we start with these 90-day sprints. So the first one I kind of hinted at is we'll get you 50% of your time back as the owner, founder, CEO in 90 days, guaranteed. Like if you're working 40 hours a week, in 90 days, you'll be working 20. The other sprint that we have is about your operations. So a lot of businesses, they tend to churn through customers and clients pretty quickly. These are the two most common problems we have. It's time freedom and the operational problems. So what we'll do there is just make sure we'll define the metrics based on what's going on in your company, but we'll make sure you have a sound business model, an operational model in those 90 days, so that we can then scale your company to however big you want. But most companies can't grow without those two things in place, because if the owner's too involved, as in my story even, my time's maxed out. So if I'm relying on my time to grow, it's just a math equation. How many more hours do I have to put in, and at what point do I burn out? So we need to make sure the owner is as far removed as possible, and they work when they want to, not because they have to. The operational piece, kind of the same thing. If you're just going to churn through customers, clients, employees, vendors, it's not sustainable, it's not efficient. So we solve those two problems, and then yes, we have an ongoing consulting model, which then we can stay on top of you. We're really your fractional COO at that point. So most small businesses up until even 2 to 5 million is where you'd probably want to look at bringing in a full-time COO. But a lot of people, you can get away without it until 10 to 15 million or so if you have a really good fractional COO. And those are expensive positions. When you're talking about like a true C-suite, you're mid six figures and up. So the fact that you can get that kind of resource in a fractional capacity, and not just us, I mean, there's a million people that do this kind of service, it really helps your company accelerate quickly, which is what we all want.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you have a podcast too. So what's the podcast about?
Yeah, so we have two. We do one with the two of us. It's called The Ether. And I'll give you these links. You can put them in the show notes. You can check out our goofiness if you would like to as the listener. So The Ether is with the two of us. We just love to disrupt the way people think about business, and we have a good time doing it. It's usually just the two of us. Every now and then we'll have a guest on to interview them. But that show is just like, if you want to have fun and learn a little bit about business, you should listen to that show. My show, where I interview guests, it's a daily show actually. Arguably, I think we have a lot more fun on that show, and it's the same thing. I really just want to disrupt the way you think about business, but also bring on the guests and give the listener context to what they're hearing. Because I think that sometimes is what's missing in the business world, is you hear all this information and you hear like, this is exactly the 3 steps you need to take to run Facebook ads for your company. Well, who needs to be running Facebook ads for their company? Like, who is the exact person that this episode is for? And I fell into that trap growing my last company. I thought every idea was the best idea. So when I created this podcast, I was like, I need to do 2 things. We need to have a really good time so that people want to listen to us, because that's first and foremost. But also, we need to help people understand, what are they listening to and how specifically does it apply to their business? I don't know if I mentioned the name. That one is called Harmonious at Lunch. So that's just, it's our way to have a good time, talk about business with cool people and network. It's like, I mean, I have to ask you this question. Do you believe that podcasting is the greatest scam in the world because you just get to meet cool people? Am I right?
Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, and I don't know I'm sure you get this too. You're just exchanging other guests and stuff with other people, and your network just grows.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be without it right now, to be honest with you.
I completely agree. It's a daily show, like I said. So even in the short time I've been running it, I've met with over 100 people at this point, just as guests on my show. That's outside of being on other shows like yours here. And I keep thinking to myself, like, this is fake, right? Like these people just come and talk to me for no reason, and I don't pay them. Like, what's happening? It's incredible. I love it.
It is incredible, and it's a mixture of people, right? I mean, I had a lot of awesome people come on, and a lot more coming, but it's all different. They're coming on sharing journeys just like yourself, and we go in all these different directions. I had no idea where we were going to go when you came on, and here we are talking about podcasting again. But it's so amazing. I want to say the networking part of just in general. It doesn't have to be about podcasting, but I mean, I've been going to live events and stuff like that, and I'm sure you have too. And just to be around people and not even know who they are until you start talking to them, and then they're like, "Oh, I know a friend, I know some, whatever," and it just keeps going. It's really cool. But yeah, call it a scam if you want, but but that's a new one for me. I might, yeah. But if we're talking about podcasting a little bit here, I was at the Podfest, and a bunch of hands went up when somebody asked like how many in the year haven't started a podcast yet, and like it had to be half the room if not more. So a lot of people are interested, they just don't get going, and so that you have that coming up where people want to jump in, but then I also see a lot of people fall off. So so it gives you, as long as you stay consistent and keep doing what you're doing, it gives you that momentum, and you'll be so much further in the end. And, I'm sure you hear the same thing. You have to be in it for a long time, and then everything's going to shoot to the moon or whatever, and it could happen. It might not happen. People want it to happen overnight. I think that's why people give up, but they don't see the real, the networking part and stuff. They don't, that's what you need. That's what you got to hold on to. So,
yeah. If it was a solo show, full transparency, I don't know. Well, I definitely couldn't do a daily show. I don't know who would listen, but I honestly don't know if I would do it for a long time. And I think what was Alex Hormozy said, like 21 episodes, you're a top 1% podcast just because of the number of people who do fall off. So for those of you who have a podcast or want to do one as a solo show, I respect you a lot. And John, I know you've done solo episodes. I just love the guest piece and talking to somebody else. If I can network with somebody and just let the world listen in and hear two fascinating stories and also learn something about, in my case, business, and everybody wins, that's why I call it a scam, because it's like, what's the downside? There really is not a downside. And it's just one of the coolest mediums I think that currently exists. So the fear of failure is there for people. What you said that's just great business advice. It may or may not happen. So when I started mine, I said, how do we make it happen quicker? Well, we do it once a day. And that's delusional advice, and you shouldn't take it. But that was what works for me.
That's right. Yeah. And, if you want to talk the solo part, I don't like them as much because I'm talking to myself to a camera, right? It's really weird. I find it really weird. So what I did one time, it was my father's birthday in November. And I don't know if you listened to it or watched or anything, but he passed away a while ago, when I was in my 20s. But I wanted to say something about him. So I had my friend, fitness coach, come on, and he was there on the screen. So I could feel like I was talking to him in a way, So that was kind of cool because I was able to express myself more emotionally, I guess, in that way, And obviously he asked me questions at the end, but that wasn't planned or anything. But so I'm just saying that, like, that there's a way around some things like that, or I haven't tried this yet, but maybe you put a picture and cut a hole out around the camera or whatever, So you're talking to your kids, like, this is what you got to do for what, something like that. But
I love it. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, have your dog in the room. Just have a do a podcast with your dog.
Yeah,
That's
right. I mean, but I mean, that's we're podcast is talking about that. Everybody else does like 30 clips, 30-second clips or whatever,
yeah.
and that doesn't take long, but yeah, solo is tough, and you really have to know your stuff. Whatever if you're focused on one area, you're sharing information on the same thing over and over and over again. But yeah, so anyways, how does somebody connect with you, Brandon?
So I would say the best way, obviously not Facebook Messenger. I hinted at that in the beginning of the show. I am a disaster with Messenger and with texting. I'm no better with texting. So all jokes aside, if you want to follow me, if you're not in business or you just want to check out what I'm doing, definitely follow me on social media. My handle pretty much everywhere is Brandon Business Builder, which I might change to the Executor based on what John said. So we'll see. We'll see if the FBI comes after me. But if you are in business and you want to see any of this resonated with you, and you want to kind of see what that path would look like to get some more of your time back or help grow your company, what I would say is we have an 8-minute assessment. It's our business diagnostic tool. It's called the BAD. It's at whatif.com. I'm sure it's in the show notes here. I would say take that assessment. It's designed to give you instant clarity on where your business stands right now and where the holes are, where it's leaking, whether it's your time, it's your operations, it's your marketing. We'll tell you exactly where that is. And the report on the backside gives you a 10-step detailed plan on how to fix it. So you don't have to pay me. You don't have to meet with me. You don't have to even hear from me ever again. You will have a plan to fix your company and scale it at whatever pace you want. So we're really proud of that tool. It's helped a lot of people. And I would say, if you have any questions about your business, start there first.
Awesome. That's great. And, I'll have to listen to your podcast. So, I mean, whoever's listening to this could reach out and start listening to your podcast too. I'm sure it's really good. And so I have one question I ask every podcast guest I have. So what are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Oh, man. It's a big question.
3.
Everything else you asked me was really easy. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I would say number 1 for me is God first. And that's been a foundational principle really more recently in my business career. But something that I heard was actually is the first 4 words of the Bible is in the beginning, God. And I'm like, the answer is, it's right in front of you. In the beginning, God. So for me, it is seek God first, seek that wisdom and guidance. Obviously, I am a man of faith, and if that's not your thing, that's totally fine. But for me, that is foundational to everything I do. After that, I would say it's who, not how. I hate to cut the list to 2, but it's 2 things for me. It's God first, and then who can shortcut this journey? Because and I mentioned this, you can never get your time back. You can always get your money back. You can always make more money. Money is limitless, but your time is finite. And if you seek out who can help you, rather than just try to figure out how you can help yourself and get to wherever you want to be, I promise you will accelerate on your journey faster than anything else possible. So those are my 2. I don't know what a third one is. You can make up a third one for me and I'll take it. Maybe answer your DMs. That would be really helpful.
What's that?
I said answer your DMs when people reach out to you. That would be awesome.
That's right. Yeah. All right. We'll make that number 3.
Yeah.
No, Brandon, I appreciate you jumping on and sharing your journey. And I'm excited to see where you go with your business and your podcast and stuff. And, we'll definitely have to stay in touch. So
yeah, man. Thank you for having me. This was awesome. I had a lot of fun.
Good.